Okay, we got some more eggplant.
Uncle Buck's Backyard Garden.
Welcome back to Uncle Buck's Backyard Garden. We've got a few things to talk about. I think I'm going to start off with a little segment I call I'm Not a Complete Idiot. It's not often I get to say that, so I wanted to start this video with that item. Then we'll go into pots, we'll go into raised beds, and we'll go into ground planting and the soil for each one of those. So let's get started with I'm not an idiot, or I'm not a complete idiot. So in the first video we talked about having your planting zone, and in the description of the video we had the resources there. You can look up your planting zone, and then from that, once you know your planting zone, like we're in zone 8A, then I did a search for a planting calendar for zone 8, and in the description of the first video there's an example of a growing calendar or planting calendar for zone 8. That is really helpful. The interesting thing is we're again in North Texas, so Texas Gardener had an article at the back in their latest magazine, and it's the fall planting guidelines for Texas, and they actually have a picture of Texas. They have it split up in 4 different zones, and for zone 2, that's Texas in their map. Listen to this. These are all of the types of vegetables that you should be planting between July 15th and August 15th. So for zone 2, bush beans, so like the green beans should be planted, Brussels sprouts, carrots, Swiss chard, collards, sweet corn, cucumbers, peppers, potatoes, not radishes, summer squash, tomatoes. So those are items that should be planted in between July 15th and August 15th. And why is that important? Well, with gardening, timing is important. And you wouldn't think in the middle of July to the middle of August, as hot as it is in Texas, that you should be planting items. But that's why a gardening calendar is so important. It helps you get started when you should start. Same thing in the winter, late winter, for your spring planting. You need to plant very early according to your gardening calendar. So the information we shared, I'm not a complete idiot this time, and it's actually backed up by paper. It doesn't happen very often, and Mrs. Buck can confirm that. You're planting in containers. It's best, of course, to buy soil in bags. It doesn't make sense to buy soil in bulk or anything like that when you're planting in containers. So the soil that I enjoy using the most is this Miracle-Gro. It might be hard to see. I'll talk about it. Miracle-Gro. The reason why is it protects against underwatering. So it really has some items that are mixed in with that mix that hold water. And that's one of the big things with your containers, is especially during the summer, you're going to have to water almost every day, maybe even in the morning and a little bit in the evening, because containers dry out so much faster. The other good thing about the Miracle-Gro potting mix is that they have a little bit of fertilizer mixed in. If you use a different type of bagged soil, just make sure that you get a nice balanced fertilizer and mix a little bit of that in as you're getting your plants ready. The other thing too is when you're planting in pots, you'll need to feed your plant, basically a little bit every month, maybe every other month, depending on how big the pot is and how much you've got planted. The plants need to be fed just like we do. So continue to feed. Buy in your soil and bag, makes complete sense, and then You can plant all types of things. Vegetables, you can plant, we have right behind us, we have turnips that are growing in pots. We have herbs. We have a good way is strawberries. Strawberries planted in containers. What I find is when strawberries grow and they hang outside of the container, they're not laying on the ground, they do a whole lot better. So growing strawberries in containers can do a very, very good job. So you can start small and you can enjoy gardening that way in containers. In our backyard garden, of course, we have raised beds. We'll show some pictures of those raised beds as well as the containers that we have. And the thing about the raised beds is it makes complete sense to buy bulk and soil. I do not buy bagged soil to as the main ingredients in my raised beds. The reason why is because of cost and the amount of trash that you would have left over. So for $50 to $60, the nursery right down the street, we have a nursery, it's called Strong's Nursery. They will deliver like 2 to 3 yards, I believe it's 3 yards of soil for a raised bed that they can deliver per load. So $60 gets you 3 yards of their planting mix. And then what I can do is I spend a little bit of money and buy bag things to amend my soil. So in the description below, we'll put a link to an article from, I believe it's Oregon University, that talks about how to amend your soil. Amending your soil is very important because you need to keep the soil rich so that you can continue to feed those plants. So there's some items that they list that are really good for amending your soil. Some things that I use is cow manure compost. I use some peat moss and a little bit of organic fertilizer mixed in as I'm building my raised bed. And then each growing season, as plants come out, I amend a little bit more into those raised beds. The soil will settle a little bit and you'll need to mix in some amendments as well. And so by doing that, by buying in bulk, you don't have all of the trash from the bags. Most plastic isn't recycled anyway. Very little plastic that you throw in your recycling bin is actually recycled. So the bags are really not something that makes sense for companies to recycle. So we leave the bagged soil when we're using with our raised beds. We use that for just amending. The other thing, when you're using raised beds and you're building them, you can go online. There's a million different ways to build a raised bed. You can build a raised bed off of some scrap or some trash that somebody's throwing away. You can take things that people are throwing away and build them into a raised bed. You can actually go on, I think, Lowe's.com. They have an article that shows how to build a raised bed. We use a little bit of corrugated steel on the side of ours. It's some friends of ours. They had friends in California in the Napa area, and they had the raised beds, and so we kind of copied a little bit of that. Others have copied the raised beds that we have and made them a little different for their particular circumstances or their yard. So whatever you use, just remember that if you're going to only raise your bed about a foot or a foot and a half, that you can still get rabbits and things like that coming into those raised beds. Things like onions, okra, peppers, those things rabbits don't get into as much as other particular, like lettuce or carrots. So if you are going to use a smaller raised bed, you may want to have some type of this is a little mesh, little wire mesh. You can get rolls of it. You might want to put that around your raised bed if you're going only about a foot or a foot and a half. Then the other raised beds that we have are about 2.5 to 3 feet tall, and of course we don't have to worry about rabbits and such getting into that. Other pests can get into them, but at least we don't have to worry about the rabbits. The other raised beds, the taller ones, what I suggest is putting a mesh like this along the bottom before you put your soil in. The reason why is because you don't want any burrowing pests to burrow under and make a home in your raised bed. You don't want moles or rats or anything like that burrowing in. This will allow, this will keep the pests out of your raised bed, but it will allow roots to grow through if you have a plant that grows roots deep enough. Most of the plants that we grow do not have they do not have roots that grow that deep, but this will just keep you safe, and it's inexpensive. All right, now let's talk about growing in the ground. So we'll show you a picture of our compost that I built. I actually took some scrap wood and I built a compost bin. I again used this mesh so that it keeps pests out. If you have a large yard that you're going to be planting in the ground, then I suggest getting compost started as soon as possible, because you really need to amend your soil, and if you have a large garden, it's going to be very expensive to do that. So try to compost as much as possible. The other thing is you can amend certain areas. If you need a certain area of your garden to have a higher nutrients, then you can amend a portion of that garden so that the things that need to have more nutrients can grow there. Most of your seed packages will tell you what type of soil is needed for the plants. If it needs a really rich soil, or a medium soil, things like that. So you can plant based on where your soil is the best, and amend some areas of your garden that way. The other thing too is you're going to have to make sure that you keep pests out. So some type of fencing. This fencing is small enough that it'll keep out all of your pests. So I suggest building some type of little fence around your garden. It's really disappointing when you have something that's growing well. You look, you go, oh, you got this great big purple bell pepper that's growing, and you go out the next day and there's 3 bites out of it or something like that. So you want to keep your pests out of your garden if at all possible. All right, so another item we've got is we've got an update on our rescue plant. So let me get that rescue plant and show you how it's doing. All right. So a friend of ours, if you follow on Instagram, you'll have seen a picture. We'll also post a before picture. So this little thing, it had been ordered online, and then it got delivered to the office. The office was closed, and our friend forgot about it. It sat there for a week or so in the box, and by the time she was able to get it picked up, it was in pretty rough condition. So she said, "Hey, Uncle Buck, can you do something with this?" And so we took some of the Miracle Grow soil and packed it in. We also put a little bit of fertilizer extra. It's a really mild fertilizer that we use, and this is a turmeric plant, and they actually suggest you feed it once a month with a 555 fertilizer. That's the numbers on the bag. It tells you how strong the fertilizer is. So it's growing really, really well. The only problem with a rescue plant like this is it's just like a child. You get it, you take it home, you feed it, it really starts to flourish, and about the time it starts to flourish, it leaves the house. It won't call you, it won't return your messages. So yeah, a lot like a child. Anyway, yeah. So that's rescued plants. So the other thing I really wanted to talk about is citrus plants. The last thing, citrus plants are great to grow in pots. The reason why is because here in Texas, even North Texas, that is, you have to take those plants inside. So we have several citrus plants. We have Meyer lemon, and we also have some lime. And I've ordered from US Citrus, which is a very interesting site. If you're looking to get lemons, limes, or other citrus trees, US Citrus is a very interesting website to go visit. They're a Texas company that has all types of lime trees. They even have I believe it's called a fingerling. It's maybe an Australian fingerling lime. It looks like an eggplant actually, and it grows really long and skinny. So and the flesh inside almost looks like jelly beans or something. So it's an interesting site. But we've got a few more citrus, more lemon, lime trees coming from them, and we plant them in pots so that when it gets around 40 degrees, then I take and I wheel them in. I've got a little dolly. I wheel them into the garage and keep them in the garage until the weather warms up again. And so that's a very good way to grow citrus plants, because they need the warmth, and also they do well in pots. So if you're looking for and have questions, I know somebody asked a question about a key lime tree and how to take care of it. They were having a little problems with it. Go on to US Citrus, and they have a tremendous amount of information down in the bottom about how to take care of your citrus plants. They too need to be fertilized. They need to be fed once a month. But an important thing is they need a little bit different mix. So if you're going to have citrus plants, make sure that you look for a citrus-based fertilizer to feed them about once a month. So that's our video for the day. We hope you've enjoyed it. And next time we'll try to get some interviews of some friends that have started gardens and why they started them and what struggles and what enjoyments they're having out of their garden. So thanks for joining us.